A man remembers every detail of his beloved. He recalls a promise made between them. The man, Louis, realizes the red-haired woman might be Garnet, the one he has searched for as she thinks his name. He leans closer, determined to confirm his feelings. The story jumps back 6 years into the past. A young maid, Garnet Sutherland, is introduced. Garnet's name, a stern, purple-haired head maid, confronts her. Garnet explains she was given another task. She promises to complete the chore immediately. Garnet reflects on her family's low status as lesser nobles, forcing them into servitude. She resolves to work her hardest for her family. A young blonde noble, Felicia Mia Huntington, appears. Felicia, the Duke's son's fiancée, kindly offers Garnet lunch. Garnet cautiously asks what she needs. Felicia puts on an innocent, cute facade. The lunch tray holds simple buns and soup. With a sudden crash, Felicia's sweet demeanor vanishes as she magically knocks the food to the floor. Felicia cruelly tells Garnet that she doesn't deserve good food. She menacingly offers a plate of burnt scraps instead. Garnet stares in horrified disbelief. Felicia coldly orders her to eat every bite. Tears of fear fill Garnet's eyes. Kneeling, she realizes that angering the important fiancé will get her fired. She worries that her family will starve without her income. Garnet kneels helplessly before Felicia. Sobbing, she forces the burnt food into her mouth. Felicia laughs, cruelly mocking Garnet for eating the filthy food. A young, brown-haired boy kneels before the crying Garnet. The Duke's son, Louis Augustus Randall, gently offers to clean her face. Felicia intervenes, blaming Garnet, but Louis rebukes her. Garnet realizes her savior is Felicia's fiancé. The narration explains Felicia's love for being the center of attention. She flaunts her wealth, status, and relationship with Lord Louis. Louis forcefully pulls his arm away from Felicia's grasp. Felicia is stunned by his rejection. Louis takes Garnet's hand, offering to help her get cleaned up. He feels anger at the cruel treatment she endured. Felicia watches in shock as Louis holds Garnet's hand. Felicia's shock turns to pure fury, possessively claiming Louis as hers. She fantasizes about marrying Louis and being pampered forever, a vision filled with malice. Louis leads Garnet away as she worries about dirtying his hand. He turns back with a gentle, reassuring smile. Garnet remembers that in that dark moment, Louis was like the sun. She recalls her family's tragic downfall after her father's death. Her mother forbade her from becoming a knight, fearing she would sacrifice herself like her father, as pride couldn't feed them. Garnet chose to work to support her family. She found a position at Lord Louis's mansion. Garnet recalls her painful days, looked down upon by servants and tormented by Felicia. She remembers the day Louis knelt before her in the garden. As he holds her hands, he tells her it's her heart that is truly warm. The two walk away hand in hand, bathed in light. Garnet gently tells Lord Louis they have gone far enough. They exchange a silent, knowing look, promising to meet at their secret spot. That night, Garnet makes her way to a secluded cabin in the woods. Louis greets her as she enters, telling her not to be so formal. She remembers their first meeting here, finding him working late in the shed. What began by chance has become her most cherished secret joy. Finding Louis shivering, Garnet gently drapes her cloak over his shoulders. He blushes, apologizing for making her worry. He then asks her to keep what he's about to say a secret. Garnet recalls how Louis's kindness kept her warm through hard times. The memory of him taking her hand still comforts her. She resolves that now she will be the one to keep him warm. Facing him, Garnet reveals that she has a secret of her own. With determination in her eyes, she decides to show him. A promotional page signals a brief pause in the story. A soft sparkle as she conjures a small, gentle flame on her fingertip. Louis stares in awe, asking if what he's seeing is magic. He feels the flame's glow, remarking on how warm it is. Garnet apologizes for the secrecy, explaining her mother forbade it. Louis looks at her, confused as to why she would hide such a gift. She explains that fire magic is rare and tied to weapons, and her mother only wished to protect her from their family's dangerous past. A look of understanding and sadness crosses Louis's face. Garnet smiles, saying it's okay to use her magic to keep him warm. He thinks of how everyone else is cold, only caring about his title. Realizing she is the only one who is warm, he asks if he is as important as family to her. She looks at him with affection and softly agrees. Ah. The flame suddenly flares up, startling her. Oops, she murmurs, pinching a strand of hair that was singed. Louis rushes to her, urging her to be careful. As he gently touches her hair, he silently vows to protect this girl forever. The next day, Louis practices his swordsmanship on a training dummy. He is determined to get stronger so he can protect Garnet. Suddenly, Garnet calls his name, startling him mid-swing. Flustered at being discovered, he explains he was secretly training. Garnet smiles, pointing to the stables and saying it's her job to care for the horses. She cheerfully offers to take over the work for him. As she passes by, Louis continues his determined practice. He stops her, asking if she knows swordsmanship. She shyly admits her father taught her a little. In that moment, they both realized they were secretly training to protect the other. From that day on, the narration explains, they grew even closer. For Garnet, using her magic to help him had become second nature. Louis takes a sip from his mug, exclaiming in surprise that it's now hot milk. He confirms the temperature is perfect and warmly offers her a sip. Garnet blushes intensely at the thought of an indirect kiss. A sudden spark as their hands nearly touch. Thump! A spark flies as their foreheads accidentally collide. Surrounded by flowers, Garnet wonders why her heart is racing so fast. Later, Garnet watches from a distance as Louis trains in the yard. At the same time, Louis reflects on how much stronger he has become. Carrying a heavy bucket, Garnet confronts the painful reality of her hopeless love. She reminds herself that Louis has Lady Felicia and that she must give up these feelings. She cherishes her memories with him, wishing this time could last just a little longer. 1 year later, Louis falls ill and is confined to his room. He often got sick, but this time was worse, and even his parents only visited once. While sweeping, Garnet senses that this time feels different. She overhears two maids gossiping that Sir Louis has a contagious disease and has gone blind. Horrified, Garnet struggles to process the devastating news. She sees Lady Felicia being escorted toward Louis's room by guards. Garnet approaches Felicia to ask about Sir Louis. Felicia recoils in fear, calling his illness terrifying. She looks down on Garnet with cold disdain. A guard intervenes, informing Garnet that Sir Louis is calling for her. Stunned, Garnet wonders if he's truly asking for her. The scene shifts to a grand, lamp-lit library at night. By his bedside, Louis apologizes, saying he was too busy fighting the illness to see her. He suddenly grabs her hand, pulling her close as she cries out his name. Holding her hand to his cheek, Louis smiles, finding her touch comforting. Through tears, Garnet asks if he really can't see, and he sadly confirms it. He tells her he's going to a distant country to treat his eyes. Garnet looks down, completely speechless. Fighting back tears, she forces a smile and insists that he will definitely be cured. He thanks her, promising to see her with his own eyes the next time they meet. Louis looks at her with intense determination. Garnet tearfully reminds him that he already has a fiancée. He dismisses Felicia as his fiancée in name only, revealing she was disgusted by his illness. He gently holds her face, vowing to become worthy of marrying her and asking her to wait. Overcome with emotion, she tearfully agrees. Later, Garnet stands dejectedly in the hall as the other servants watch. She is startled as Lady Felicia steps directly in her path. Felicia stares at her with a cold, empty gaze. Felicia angrily confronts Garnet, remembering how Louis always looked past her. Enraged, Felicia vows to make Louis regret shaming her. She cruelly accuses Garnet of bringing the illness to Louis. Garnet desperately denies the false and terrible accusation. Felicia screams for the guards to remove the disease carrier. Pointing an accusing finger, Felicia condemns Garnet, who is surrounded by judging eyes. A promotional page advertises staff positions. A promotional image for another series is shown. Kicked out, Garnet sits alone outside with her suitcase. She recalls Felicia's lies and how she was thrown out, resolving never to return. A kind voice asks if she is Garnet. A man named Bernard Horn introduces himself, fulfilling a promise to her mother to pick her up. Startled, Garnet questions his connection to her mother. Their journey begins in a speeding carriage. Inside, Bernard stuns Garnet by announcing his decision to adopt her. Bernard presents a document stating he has her mother's consent. He reveals his loneliness, confessing his lifelong desire for a family. He promises to support her family, confirming her mother agreed to the arrangement. Garnet understands this will save her family, but is overwhelmed by the suddenness. She stands speechless, utterly stunned by the turn of events. They arrive at a massive junkyard, which Bernard explains is his new waste disposal business. He smiles pleasantly, ordering her to burn everything there. Shocked, Garnet questions his outrageous demand. A sinister grin spreads across his face as he reveals he knows her secret. He recalls his investigation into her father, the Magic Knight, and her inherited fire magic. He menacingly tells Garnet that she was very difficult to find. Her heart sinks as she realizes his true intention was to use her all along. When she denies having magic, he angrily grabs her, threatening to cut off her family's support. Tears streaming down her face, Garnet desperately pleads with Lord Horn. Thud! He kicks her to the ground, demanding she call him master and withholding food until she obeys. Crying in the dirt, she realizes she's been tricked into slavery. She thinks of Louis, remembering how her fire magic holds all her happiest memories with him. Clenching her fist, she refuses to use her precious power for such a cruel purpose. She finally unleashes her power, and as the trash burns, Lord Horn laughs at his brilliant business plan. While he celebrates his coming fortune, an exhausted Garnet vows to one day return for Louis. The narration explains Bernard's trash-burning project became a huge success, earning him wealth and praise. Day after day, Garnet is forced to burn trash, collapsing in her ragged clothes. After 4 long years of this torment, she kneels in the dirt, thinking of her family. Her face smudged with soot, she quietly wonders how Louis is doing. An overseer strikes her, yelling at her to stop slacking off as more trash arrives. Garnet bows her head, enduring the abuse in silent despair. Bernard notes her magic is weakening and decides to motivate her by dropping her treasured book. Garnet bursts into the mansion, frantically asking her master where her book is. He smiles cruelly, admitting he threw it in the trash and threatening her family again. She collapses in horror, realizing her precious book is lost in the junkyard. Desperately, she claws through the garbage, remembering she had borrowed it from Louis. She finds the book, but it is completely tattered and destroyed. Memories of Louis burn away, as she thinks of the 4 years that have passed, and the love she has likely lost. A single tear falls as she accepts he may have already forgotten her. To her horror, she realizes her fire magic has completely vanished. She resigns herself to her fate, believing that without her magic, she is useless and will die here. A man appears in the rain, announcing that a marriage proposal has arrived for her. Weakly, she asks what will become of her family if she marries. She remembers her poor mother and brothers, questioning if they are still suffering. Tears in her eyes, she desperately asks if he is truly supporting them. In the pouring rain, Bernard coldly admits that he lied to her mother. He smirks down at her, cruelly mocking both her and her mother as idiots. Thump! The crushing weight of the truth hits her, and she collapses, realizing it was all for nothing. The narration explains her new betrothed is a man who seized power by ousting the former king. Known as the Tyrant Grand Duke, he is a ruthless man who crushes all who oppose him. Garnet stands before a grand, imposing mansion, realizing she is now married to this fearsome man. Led by a maid, she walks silently down the long, empty hall. With a heavy heart, she accepts that she will never be able to see Louis again. She enters a vast study, and her heart stops. She recognizes the man sitting at the desk. A handsome, stern-looking man with brown hair and blue eyes looks up at her. It's Louis. A red-haired woman cries with joy, realizing his eyes can see again. She runs toward a man with white hair, happily calling out, Louis. Louis glares down at her, coldly ordering her not to say his name so familiarly. Confused, she reaches toward the man with dark hair, questioning if it's really Louis. He dismisses her, stating he isn't interested in embracing a stranger. Hurt, she asks why he's being so cruel, insisting that she is Garnet. She desperately asks if he's just embarrassed and pretending not to know her. His cold gaze intensifies, and she begs him not to look at her like that. He gestures to a document, informing her that she will receive nothing from him. He coldly assumes she is just like all the other women who will eventually run away. Garnet realizes that while this man is Louis, he feels like a completely different person. A maid leads Garnet into a sparse, cold-looking room. She recalls that all the previous women sent to the Duke left within a month. The maid quietly excuses herself as Garnet watches her leave. Garnet reflects on Louis's coldness and constant criticism, realizing her ordeal is just beginning. She sits alone for a meal at the end of a long, empty dining table. Louis appears in the doorway, demanding to know why she is there. She smiles hopefully, saying she wants to have a meal with him. He flatly refuses, stating he has no interest and must attend to his duties. She desperately offers to accompany him on his official duties. He curtly replies that she would only hinder him. He coldly states he only chose her because his parents wanted an heir, so she has no reason to meddle. Struck by his words, she sadly wonders if he really didn't come to get her. He turns back slightly, confirming he did not come for her. As he walks away, he calls her stupid act an eyesore. His cruel words echo in her mind as she processes the insult. Heartbroken, she runs away, concluding the Louis she knew is gone and she must leave. She pictures herself returning home to her welcoming family. She resolves to leave, not because he is a cruel duke, but because he is Louis. First, however, she must say goodbye. Entering a library, she notes to herself that he still seems to love reading. She finds a particular book and smiles, recognizing it as one Louis used to love. Closing her eyes, she finds a moment of peace in her memories of the past. She hugs the book to her chest, lost in thought. Waking up, she realizes she fell asleep from the stress. She looks up to see Louis leaning over her, surrounded by a vision of flowers. Flustered and blushing, she calls out his name in shock. He gazes down at her softly as she wonders why he's there after calling her an eyesore. He leans in closer, his gloved hand gently brushing against hers on the book. He places his hand over hers on the book's cover. He takes the book from her, sternly telling her not to touch things as she pleases. She realizes with a blush that he was only reaching for the book. Mortified by her misunderstanding, she quickly apologizes. Suggesting a change of topic, she listens as he observes that she seems to cherish the old book. He questions why she said even now, explaining that he only recently started reading it. She looks at him, surprised by his claim of having only found the book recently. Louis smiles gently, confessing that the book somehow brings a warmth to his heart whenever he reads it. Garnet stares at him, a glimmer of hope and realization dawning in her expression. She suddenly remembers the gentle, smiling face of the Louis she knew from her past. A single, significant tear falls from her eye. She realizes he doesn't remember her or the book they shared. A shattered portrait of a young Louis underscores her terrible realization. He's lost his memories. Garnet looks down at him, vowing to make him remember their time together. As Louis stares coldly, she reaffirms her promise to restore his memories. The scene transitions to the grand mansion where they now live. Thump! Louis enters a room, his expression closed off. Garnet waits for him with a warm and welcoming smile. He coldly orders his meal to be brought to his room, and a maid confirms. Her hope for a shared breakfast is immediately dashed. Garnet volunteers to deliver the meal to Louis, surprising another maid. Carrying the tray, she knows distance won't help her feelings reach him. The maid notes that Garnet is unusually positive about the marriage. Garnet blushes, filled with quiet determination. Before his door, she steels her resolve to help him remember. She finds him sitting alone in the large, empty room. Louis dismisses her presence, stating he didn't ask for her. She serves him anyway, saying she wanted to do it herself. She fondly recalls the joy of sharing meals with her family. She imagines sharing casual stories with him over dinner. Blushing, she admits her desire to share that simple warmth with him. Louis coldly warns her not to expect anything from him. She smiles sweetly, replying that she stopped expecting things long ago. She cheerfully brings up the marriage paperwork, noting it's not yet signed. He remains silent, his expression stern and unreadable. She takes his hand, promising to always stay by his side. A sudden jolt hits him as he questions the strange feeling. Clutching his head, he's struck by a confusing flash of memory. Garnet calls his name, alarmed by his sudden pain. Overwhelmed, he orders her to get out of the room immediately. She watches in shock, completely stunned by his harsh reaction. Later, she explains her action as a habit from her servant days, confusing the maid. She asks the maid, Dorothy, about Louis's condition. He seems to have recovered. She smiles, saying she reviewed the servant roster to get to know everyone. She notes that none of the servants from Louis's former home are present. The maid confirms that his parents are also absent, leaving the mansion nearly empty. Garnet sadly wonders how lonely he must have been all this time. The scene shows Louis sitting alone, quietly reading a book. He glances up, coldly refusing an unseen offer. Garnet prepares a tray, thinking his indifference gives her an opportunity. A glint in her eye reveals she has a plan. She quietly approaches him from behind as he reads. Reaching out, she gently covers his eyes with her hands. Her heart pounds with nervous anticipation. A flashback shows her playing the same Guess Who game with a young Louis. The younger Louis instantly recognizes her warm hands and calls her name. He was right, and they share a happy, blushing moment. In the present, she holds her breath, hoping he remembers that moment. A flash of recognition widens his eye as the memory surfaces. The mental shock is too much, and he collapses as Garnet rushes to help. Louis suddenly pins Garnet against a wall, their faces inches apart. He quietly says, "I see," leaving Garnet confused by his action. He asks if this is how she plans to spend her first night and calls her Kelly, observing that she's something else, which makes her blush in surprise. Flustered, she thinks that this isn't why she got close to him. A look of determination crosses her face as she thinks she can use this situation. She resolves to use their proximity to melt his cold heart and give him her warmth, and as she does, he reaches for her hand. Startled, she looks up as he gently takes her gloved hand in his. His eyes meet hers, and he is struck by a sense of familiarity. He stares intently, trying to place where he's seen her eyes before. Gripping her shoulders, he looks deeply into her eyes, searching for a memory. He's certain he's seen her eyes before, and the realization hits him with a jolt. Thump! The shock is too much, and he suddenly collapses on top of her. She catches him, crying out his name and asking if he's all right. Holding him, she realizes he isn't hurt but is too heavy to move alone. She watches him sleep in her lap, blushing as she notes how much he's grown. She wonders if he'll be angry when he wakes, cheekily blaming him for growing so big. A fragmented memory surfaces of a boy asking someone to marry him, but Louis can't remember who. Despite the lost memory, he feels a sense of warmth in his unconscious state. She leans close to his face, and he awakens with a start. He quickly sits up, catching her by the shoulders. His thoughts race as he's sure he's seen her eyes somewhere before. Clutching his head, he realizes trying to remember causes him intense pain. Looking at her resting against him, he wonders if she cared for him while he was unconscious. He finds himself intrigued, thinking he has never met anyone quite like her. As he lifts her into his arms, he notes that, unlike everyone else, she isn't afraid of him. Cradling her, he is surprised by the warmth she radiates. He gently lays the sleeping Garnet down on a large, comfortable bed. Surrounded by a floral aura, he gazes at her and tenderly touches her chin. He quickly pulls his hand away, questioning his own uncharacteristic actions. In a dreamlike void, he wonders if staying near her will restore his lost memories. He sits alone, tormented by the question of how he could have forgotten so much. Garnet awakens, realizing with confusion that she is in a bedroom. She sees Louis sitting across the room and wonders if he brought her there. A warm, happy glow envelops her as she looks at him. She smiles, thinking that despite his memory loss, he is still kind. The scene lingers on their intense, meaningful gazes. She sits up in bed, a blissful and content smile on her face. Louis tells her it's fine, but now that she's awake, she should return to her room. Her hopeful expression quickly fades at his dismissive words. He looks away, sensing a strange shift in the atmosphere between them. Believing she has a new opening, Garnet calls out to Lord Louis with renewed hope. She nervously asks if he would be willing to train with her in swordsmanship. He looks intrigued by her unexpected request, repeating the word swordsmanship. They face each other in a courtyard, both holding wooden practice swords. With her hair tied back, she admits with a blush that she expected him to refuse. Louis thinks to himself that this training might be a clue to recovering his memories. She hopes practicing swordsmanship, something they used to do together, will spark his memory. With a determined cry, she charges forward to begin their spar. Their wooden swords connect with a sharp crack as she meets his defense. He is surprised by her skill, realizing she wasn't just talking nonsense. Despite their sparring, she realizes with disappointment that none of his memories are returning. Panting heavily, she suddenly feels confused and disoriented. Realizing her stamina is completely gone after so long away from training, she collapses. Louis rushes to her side, calling out to her with concern. He gently wraps her hand with a handkerchief as she blushes at his unexpected kindness. He wonders to himself why he's so adept at bandaging wounds, having never done it before. She remembers her past self, recalling how Louis was always the one who took care of her injuries. A warm smile graces her face as she realizes his body still remembers her, even if his mind doesn't. A blonde woman with a knowing smirk appears, announcing she's found them. From off-screen, she calls out sweetly to Lord Louis. The blonde woman appears amidst a field of flowers, happily declaring she's finally found him. Garnet's hope turns to horror as she questions why this particular woman is here now. In a moment of dread, she recognizes the newcomer as Lady Felicia. The scene lingers on a smiling Lady Felicia, framed by white lilies. Felicia approaches, standing before Garnet and Louis with a pleasant smile. Garnet stares at the blonde woman, silently questioning why she has come. Turning to Louis, the blonde woman introduces herself as his fiancée Felicia. Felicia reminds him of their promise to marry once he regained his sight. Louis coldly states he has no memory of making such a promise. She brushes off his denial, casually blaming it on his memory loss. A shadow of despair falls over Garnet as she listens. Garnet angrily recalls how Felicia abandoned Louis after he went blind from illness. Her fury grows, realizing Felicia has only returned to claim him now that his sight is restored. In a flashback, Felicia recalls hearing at a party that Louis had recovered his sight and developed amnesia. She believed his parents felt guilty for breaking their previous engagement. Convinced she was his original fiancée, she decided it was her right to become his wife. She recalls her arrival, wondering who the new girl with Louis was. Felicia scoffs internally, judging Garnet as nowhere near as beautiful as herself. Taking Louis's arm, she offers to help him remember his memories over tea. Garnet steps forward, desperately asking them to wait. Felicia turns back with a dismissive glance, questioning Garnet's right to interfere. With her hand over her heart, Garnet firmly declares that she is Grand Duke Louis's wife. Felicia glares, coldly assuming Garnet will be leaving soon anyway. Louis looks away, cryptically replying, "Who knows?" His ambiguous response gives Garnet a glimmer of hope. Annoyed by Garnet's presence, Felicia decides she's had enough. A cruel smile forms on Felicia's face as she calls Garnet persistent. She triumphantly presents a document, declaring she will be his bride with his parents' approval. She explains his parents deemed Garnet's collapsed house unworthy of him. Shocked, Garnet questions the official marriage contract Felicia holds. Felicia smugly pushes the approved contract toward her rival. With tears in her eyes, Garnet defiantly insists that she won't leave. After Garnet refuses to back down, Felicia scoffs at the idea of a temporary wife. An attendant's hand swings swiftly towards a startled Garnet. Wow! The brutal impact sends Garnet reeling. A male attendant is revealed to be the one who struck her. The two attendants stand stoically behind Lady Felicia. Felicia smiles with satisfaction, warning Garnet this is the price of defiance. She turns to her men, asking them to do one more thing for her. With a sinister look, she mentions a nearby forest and the monsters rumored to live there. Felicia pays off her men, ordering them to dump Garnet in a forest where monsters roam. Louis sits at his desk, looking stern as he prepares to write. An attendant reports that Lady Garnet has packed her things and left the mansion. Louis looks up from his work, asking if she said anything before leaving. Felicia internally scoffs at his concern for a filthy girl. Feigning sadness, Felicia lies that Garnet said she was scared of him. With a sinister smile, Felicia vows that she will be the one to support him now. Louis quietly processes Felicia's lie, repeating the word, scared. A hazy memory of him and Garnet holding hands flashes through his mind. The memory continues, with Garnet leaning over him with a caring expression. Back in the present, he remains seated at his desk, deep in thought. Felicia smiles at Louis, confident her plan is working. Whoosh! Garnet awakens with a jolt, finding herself lost in a strange forest. She recalls fainting while with Felicia and being carried away by guards. Spotting the mansion in the distance, she realizes she isn't too far. Thud! Determined, she takes a step forward, resolving to go back. Growl. A monstrous, red-eyed bear suddenly blocks her path, shocking her. She panics, realizing the grave danger she is in. Crunch. The bear's sharp claws tear into the ground as it prepares to pounce. A fiery resolve ignites within her. She cannot die until Louis remembers. She looks at her hands, feeling a sudden surge of burning heat. To her astonishment, her hands are suddenly wreathed in flames. She unleashes a fireball directly at the menacing bear. The magical flame flies straight toward the beast's face. Startled by the attack, the bear turns and flees into the woods. She stares at her hands, panting in disbelief that she actually used magic. With newfound determination, she prepares to head back to the mansion. Felicia stands in the grand hall, certain that Garnet's return is impossible. A disheveled but resolute Garnet appears at the entrance, announcing she is back. Felicia stares in utter disbelief as Louis appears behind her. Louis looks at Garnet's state with concern, asking what happened to her. Garnet explains that she fainted with Felicia and woke up in the woods. Feigning innocence, Felicia asks if Garnet is scared now for having left. Felicia whispers that she'll forgive her, adding that no one will blame her for leaving. Garnet turns away from Felicia's manipulative words with a glare. Facing Louis, she reaffirms her promise to never leave his side. He gazes at her, a soft floral aura surrounding him as he takes in her words. Felicia glares daggers at her rival, silently fuming. Their eyes lock in a moment of intense connection. Zap, a sudden jolt of pain courses through Louis's mind. He clutches his head, overwhelmed by an unbearable headache. Garnet rushes to his side, calling his name as he stumbles in pain. Shattered memories flash through his mind, feeling like they're burning. Ha! He gasps for breath, sweating as the intense pain continues. Leaning against Felicia, Louis asks Garnet if she can use fire magic. He realizes that a wielder of fire magic, maybe the key to his memories. Felicia wonders nervously if Louis knows another woman with such an ability. Ugh. Garnett shoves Felicia away, catching Louis as he begins to collapse. Supporting him, she gently tells him it's time to rest in his room. Felicia watches them leave, annoyed that Garnett is a hindrance to her plans. She smirks deviously, deciding it's enough to show him fire for now. Garnett walks down a hallway, suddenly noticing the strange smell of something burning. Horrified, she looks out the window to see the forest is on fire. A painful memory of exchanging books with a younger Louis surfaces, consumed by flames. Ha! She panics as a memory of a burning house overwhelms her. In his arms, she deliriously mutters that everything is going to burn. He holds her close, reassuring her that he's sent people to extinguish the fire. Crying out, she begins to lose consciousness as he calls to her. She finally faints in his arms. Holding her unconscious form, he reflects that she has once again passed out. He realizes he's never cared for anyone like this, recalling puzzle pieces of her. A jolt of recognition hits him. He feels he has a memory of her. He looks up, his resolve hardening as thorny branches frame the window. He carries her down the hall, their silhouette surrounded by thorny roses. Garnett awakens, finding herself tucked into a bed. She looks over to see Louis has fallen asleep at her bedside. Startled, she calls out his name in her thoughts. She remembers the sensation of his embrace, realizing he had been holding her. She recalls him comforting her, not wanting him to suffer but feeling the warmth of his hand. He holds her hand in his sleep, thinking how warm it feels. A feeling of familiarity washes over him as he holds her hand. Memory returns of her vowing to become great as she offers him a glowing light. He envisions her smiling sweetly at him, surrounded by a halo of flowers. He lies quietly on the pillow, lost in thought. She sits up, surprised to find him awake. He admits that he didn't intend to fall asleep there. He recalls only meaning to bring her to her room and then leave immediately. She smiles warmly, thanking him for carrying her all the way to her room. He informs her that the forest fire was put out quickly without any injuries. She beams with relief, thankful that everyone is okay. He gazes at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. She offers to leave so he can rest, suggesting she will wait in another room. He grabs her arm, telling her to wait. He pulls her close, taking in the color of her eyes and scent of her hair. Surrounded by roses, he asks if she is the one he's been searching for. He gently cups her face, whispering that he understands now. His intense gaze meets hers as realization dawns. They lean in close, surrounded by a cascade of blooming flowers. He gently traces her lips with his gloved fingers. Both of them blush deeply at the sudden, intense intimacy. Kaya. She jumps back in a fluster, quickly apologizing. He calmly tells her he isn't angry, hinting at the opposite feeling. Holding her hand, he wonders why it feels so warm to him. The scene shifts to Garnett and Louis standing in a barren, wintry landscape. She looks on in horror at the burnt forest as soldiers investigate the devastation. Touching a charred tree, she feels the sorrow of the spirits and sees new life sprouting. With tears in her eyes, she whispers an apology to the forest. Louis turns to her, asking why she is the one apologizing. In a burnt forest, Garnett quietly thinks that the trees were innocent. Louis reminds her that she said she didn't want anything important to burn, leaving her confused. He looks at her intently, asking if something happened in her past. She hesitates as a painful memory of Louis flashes through her mind. Smiling warmly, she claims not to remember, deciding not to bring up his painful past. Unseen by the couple, a blonde woman in a green dress watches them from behind a charred tree. The blonde woman fumes, realizing with frustration that her fire only brought them closer together. Seething with rage, she decides that Garnett is too much of a bother and must be dealt with. Louis' thoughts turn grim as he considers that the investigation suggests the fire was arson. He glances down at Garnett, his expression unreadable. Garnett looks up with a slight smile, hoping her suspicions are wrong. Sighing, Louis rubs his temple, wondering if the blonde woman who called herself his fiancée is involved. The scene shifts to a bright town, where Garnett looks around in awe and excitement. Smiling to herself, she thinks that she wanted to see the place he cherishes. Walking through the lively streets, she questions the dark rumors she's heard about him. A maid informs a delighted Garnett that the town is famous for its meat pies. Garnett hopes she bought enough for Louis and the staff, but the maid reassures her. From a distance, the blonde woman watches Garnett's happy expression with disdain. The blonde woman glares, thinking that Garnett seems to be enjoying herself far too much. Recalling past humiliations, the blonde woman smirks sinisterly, vowing revenge and promising to properly mix her medicine. Leaving a pie shop, Garnet happily tells her maid she can't wait to share the food with everyone. The maid is touched that she bought enough for the staff, and Garnet happily replies that she wanted to eat with them. Suddenly, two men snatch the basket of pies from the maid's hands. Garnet whips around in alarm, shouting a warning. She shoves her maid to safety, falling to the ground herself as the pie basket tumbles. The two thieves escape with the basket through the crowd. The maid kneels by Garnet's side in concern, but Garnet insists she is okay. Noting the pies were stolen, the maid vows to find those responsible while Garnet looks down sadly. Garnet stops her, reasoning it would be too difficult to find them in the large crowd. Smiling gently, she suggests they should just head back. From a balcony above, the blonde woman watches them depart. The blonde woman sits alone on the balcony, thoughtfully eating one of the stolen pies. The two thieves present her with a bowl of coins as she stands on the balcony, watching. Snapping a piece of pie in her hand, the blonde woman angrily thinks that she should just have her killed. Back at the manor, a maid announces she has brought a meal for Louis, who is busy at his desk. Louis looks up from his work and gives permission to enter. Garnet enters with a warm smile, thanking him for his hard work. Louis smiles softly, mentioning he heard she went to inspect the town. She beams, proudly stating that it's one of her duties. Standing before his desk, she tells him how surprised she was by the town's lively atmosphere. He stands and walks toward her, his expression serious as he asks if something happened. Startled by his perception, Garnet looks up at him with wide eyes. He gently takes her arm, his concern evident. Holding her arm carefully, he reveals he heard she was attacked by robbers. She quickly reassures him she wasn't hurt, though she laments that her meat pie was stolen. He tells her softly that there's no need for her to push herself so hard. Stunned, Garnet realizes with a blush that he is genuinely worried about her. She smiles brightly, telling him she's all better now, and he watches her with a gentle gaze. Imagining herself with puppy ears, Garnet eagerly agrees to his unstated request to go somewhere. Garnet waits for Louis on the day of the town inspection. She spots Louis with an unfamiliar servant, curious about his work. A grand carriage arrives, drawing her attention. The blonde woman emerges, remarking on the coincidence of their meeting. The blonde woman peers over her fan, suggesting they have a talk. Garnet looks on, her expression filled with shock and dread. Stunned, Garnet recognizes her as Lady Felicia, questioning her presence. Felicia patronizingly thanks Garnet for her service and offers to arrange a new alliance for her. Garnet is utterly bewildered by the blonde woman's strange offer. Felicia smugly offers to let Garnet watch her and Louis together from a special seat. Annoyed, Garnet thinks that she has no intention of leaving. With a snap of her fan, Felicia gives a signal and a man shoves Garnet off the bridge. As she falls, Garnet realizes with horror what is happening. She understands now that the men are both working for Lady Felicia. Splash. She crashes into the cold water below. Felicia smirks victoriously, murmuring that it's too bad. Struggling to stay afloat, she panics, realizing she can't swim. Sinking deeper, she recalls her father explaining why fire magic users can't swim. Felicia taunts from above, asking if Garnet can't swim. Desperate, she tries to summon her fire magic to push the water away, but the water immediately extinguishes her flame. It's no use. On the bridge, Lady Felicia looks on in surprise. She smiles cruelly, satisfied that she has taken care of that woman. The sound of galloping hooves echoes nearby. Louis rushes toward the bridge, his face a mask of urgency. His sudden appearance startles Lady Felicia. As she loses consciousness, a hand grabs hers. She can finally see Louis. He pulls her from the water, holding her tightly in his arms. They collapse onto the grassy bank, a horse standing watch. Frantic, Louis shakes her, shouting for her to pull herself together. She coughs violently, expelling the water from her lungs. Weakly, she opens her eyes and whispers his name. He angrily asks how many more times she plans to collapse. Dazed and weak, she stares up at him. His angry expression softens into one of deep concern. With a sigh, he gently lifts her into his arms. His expression is grim and determined as he carries her. The blonde woman watches in utter disbelief, wondering why he would save his wife with such desperation. She can't comprehend why he would go to such lengths for her. Holding Garnet protectively, his eyes glow with a menacing light. He holds her close, thinking how close he was to being too late. Felicia calls out his name as he walks away with Garnet. Putting on a concerned facade, she asks if he's all right. Though she says she's glad Garnet is safe, her expression betrays her true feelings. He takes the blonde woman's shawl, telling Garnet she'll catch a cold. Without looking back, he coldly tells the blonde woman to scram. Left behind, she seethes with rage, wondering why it's always Garnet. Back at the mansion, a maid tends to the sleeping Garnet. Louis appears at the door, asking about her condition. The maid reports that she has just fallen asleep. As Garnet sleeps peacefully, Louis watches over her, quietly understanding. He lowers his gaze, lost in a moment of deep contemplation. Standing over her bed, he rationalizes his concern, thinking he just didn't want her to die. The scene shifts to an exterior view of the grand, sprawling mansion. The next day, Garnet awakens feeling much better and speaks with a maid. She recalls the hazy events of Louis rescuing her from the river and visiting her room. Blushing, she's touched that Louis went to such lengths for her. Later, she finds Louis in the library and calls out to him. He turns, surprised by her sudden appearance, and asks what he wants. With a grateful smile, she sincerely thanks him for saving her life. Her eyes widen in sudden confusion. Reaching out, she touches his forehead, sensing something is wrong. She looks at him with concern, realizing he has a fever. He asks how she knew, and she insists that she can just tell. Worried, she urges him to rest for the day, supporting his feverish body. She realizes with a pang of guilt that he fell ill because he saved her. She gently helps the weakened Louis lie down on a nearby sofa. Looking at his strained expression, she understands how much he pushed himself for her. Felicia suddenly enters with her men, declaring she's arrived just in time, shocking Garnet. Brushing Garnet aside, Felicia dramatically proclaims Louis is burning up and must be cooled down. Garnet angrily tells her to stop acting on her own. Felicia sneers, calling Garnet a pesky bug and ordering her men to catch her. As a guard seizes Garnet from behind, Felicia watches with a smug smile. Felicia mockingly grabs the guard's hand, feigning surprise that it was a person, not a bug. Garnet glares at her rival with pure fury. Felicia begins to unbutton Louis' shirt with a suggestive look. Admiring his physique, she thinks his body is wasted on a filthy woman like Garnet. As her men place hot stones on his chest, Felicia claims it will lower his fever, but Garnet cries out that it will worsen his condition. An attendant presents Felicia with medicinal herbs, which she claims will cure him instantly. Garnet stares at the herbs, a sense of familiarity and dread washing over her. A memory surfaces of Louis showing her the same plant in a book, warning that it is also a poison. Realizing the danger, Garnet lunges forward and snatches the poisonous herbs away. Felicia stares in shock, unable to believe Garnet slipped past her guard. Garnet confronts Felicia, warning her that the herbs are poisonous in their raw state. Humiliated, Felicia turns on her men, angrily accusing them of trying to kill Lord Louis. On the sofa, Louis lets out a pained groan, his condition worsening. Felicia worries that it's that illness again, just as Garnet feels a strange heat surge through her. Felicia grabs Garnet's wrist and recoils, shocked by how hot she is. Surrounded by a fiery aura, Garnet grips Felicia's arm, coldly telling her to leave if she cares for Louis. Giving in, Felicia tells her to do as she wishes and storms out with her guards. Garnet immediately turns her attention back to the suffering Louis, calling his name. She realizes with alarm that Felicia's treatment made him too cold, and he is now shivering. She reflects that her magic activated unconsciously when his body temperature fluctuated. Her fear of magic returns, reminding her of a time she burned something precious. Pushing past her fear, she leans over Louis with renewed resolve. She embraces him tenderly, vowing never to be separated from him again. Outside, a furious Felicia wonders what is wrong with Garnet. She fumes, realizing Garnet is no ordinary wife and might know about Louis' past illness. A memory of two hands clasped together flashes, and Felicia wonders if Garnet could be her. In the quiet room, Garnet gently holds Louis as he sleeps, a protective aura surrounding them. Louis sleeps peacefully, his fever seemingly gone. Cradling him, Garnet feels relieved that he's stopped trembling. He awakens to find her sleeping soundly in his arms. He sits up abruptly as she awakens, asking if she disturbed him. She reaches up, gently touching his forehead. Taking her hand, he observes that she seems to be all right now. She falls back asleep, a peaceful expression on her face. He gazes at her, wondering about his feelings when they are together. Elsewhere, a disheveled man angrily kicks debris, fed up with someone else's carelessness. Confronted by a hooded figure, he defensively claims he has no money. A blonde woman, flanked by guards, reveals herself and says she's not a debt collector. With a cold look, she identifies the man as that woman's father. She offers him support, asking him to cooperate with her in return. The man looks back suspiciously, questioning what cooperate means. The scene shifts to a later date, when Garnet is scheduled to inspect a town with Louis. A procession of carriages travels along a rural road. Inside, Garnet sits opposite Louis, feeling nervous. She reflects on the silence between them since their intimate moment in the library. Trying to connect, she cheerfully asks if he plays card games. Louis remains silent, his expression unreadable. Her smile falters, as she assumes he dislikes her suggestion. He opens a book instead, and she realizes he brought it with him. She changes tactics, asking what book he's reading. Seeing him read reminds her of his younger self, reading with another boy. She apologizes for interrupting and sits beside him, unsure what to do now. She timidly asks if she can read along with him. He slides over and wordlessly hands her the book, surprising her. Blushing with excitement, she can't believe he's allowing it. She celebrates internally, thrilled to read with Louis again. As she leans closer, he starts to tell her to stay away. She suddenly feels unwell, clutching her mouth as nausea hits her. Instantly concerned, Louis orders the driver to stop the carriage. Outside in a field, she thinks she somehow managed to express her feelings. An attendant tells her to hurry back, warning that Louis dislikes wasting time. Louis approaches, coldly stating it would be a problem if she threw up beside him. He offers her a water skin, telling her to take a rest. Stunned by his gesture, she gratefully thanks him. She ponders his unexpected kindness, which contradicts his harsh reputation. Holding the flask, she walks with a serene smile on her face. Louis watches her from a distance, his expression unreadable. Her attention is suddenly drawn to something ahead. She spots children playing in a tree, thinking they are her brother's age. She tells a confused Louis she'll be right back and dashes off. Seeing two boys stuck in a tree, she remembers a time she promised to catch a child who jumped. Thump! A boy leaps into her arms, hugging her tightly. She's taken aback by the sudden, clinging embrace. Turning, she sees Louis looking down at them with a stern expression. The situation is resolved as Garnett pats a young boy's head reassuringly. The boy looks up at her, shyly thanking her for the help. She smiles gently, patting his head and telling him to be careful. Garnett cheerfully waves to the children as Louis stands beside her, looking unimpressed. Louis asks Garnett with a stern look if she wishes to get hurt. She wonders why his anger feels more like he's worrying about her. Blushing, she looks down and promises him she will be careful. As they walk through a bustling town, she remarks on how lively it is. A man in the crowd recognizes her, and Garnett freezes, sensing his presence. A wave of fear washes over her as she begins to sweat. In a terrifying vision, the man holds her, saying he missed her, as she realizes in horror it is Count Horn. A promotional page for the creative team is displayed. The Count looms over her as she panics, wondering why he is there. Louis steps in front of Garnett, coldly asking the man who he is. The man introduces himself as Bernard Horn, Garnett's father, claiming to be in the city for business. He tells Garnett he's glad to see her looking well, and suggests they have tea together. In the present, Garnett realizes he is trying to bind her to him again. Louis tells her she can skip the inspection to spend time with her father, leaving her stunned as he walks away. The scene shifts to the exterior of a stately home. Garnett sits in tense silence across a table from her father. A flashback shows her father on his hands and knees, admitting he spent her dowry and is now buried in debt. He pleads with Garnett, asking if she can handle his debts for him. Remembering years of being treated like a slave, she resolves that she has no reason to help him. Her father smirks, revealing he anticipated her refusal and sent a letter to Louis' parents requesting a divorce on her behalf. Horrified, she listens as he suggests they return home and live as a family again. He grins greedily, asking if she can use her magic again. Garnett is shocked, wondering how he could possibly know about her powers. She realizes she's never used magic openly, then recalls the river incident and suspects Lady Felicia saw her. Her eyes widen with a dreadful realization. She connects the dots, concluding that her father is working with Lady Felicia. Meanwhile, Louis walks through the town with his entourage. Felicia appears, joyfully calling out to Lord Louis. She joins his side, explaining she heard about the inspection and came to see him. Felicia reaches for his arm, asking him to wait. As he glances down coldly, Felicia notes his sharp reaction whenever she mentions that woman. Felicia claims she saw Garnett nearly drown in the river, prompting Louis to ask what she is implying. He thinks to himself about that voice, leaving Felicia confused by his distant expression. Louis ignores Felicia's questions and walks away, leaving her calling after him. Garnett's father grabs her arm, trying to force her into a carriage. Realizing she can't overpower him, she resolves to find another way to escape. Whoa! She grabs his wrist, unleashing a burst of heat that burns him and forces him to let go. Wreathed in magical energy, Garnett defiantly declares that she will no longer obey his orders. Her father, recovering on the ground, points and orders his men to capture her, but not kill her. 3 menacing thugs suddenly appear, surrounding her with daggers drawn. Caught off guard by their speed, she realizes her magic isn't fast enough, as an attacker tackles her to the ground. Eek! The attacker is thrown off her. As her terrified father watches, Louis appears, his sword glowing with a menacing light as he demands to know what they are doing. He glares at the men, contemplating killing them, as his subordinate calls his name in caution. Garnet looks up at Louis, still on the ground. He gazes down, his expression calm and resolute. Holding his glowing sword at the ready, he orders the thugs to surrender peacefully. Garnet's father watches in terror, realizing Louis doesn't know he's involved. Louis asks Garnet if she is injured, but she assures him that she is fine. Suddenly, a frantic Felicia runs toward them, asking why Lord Louis came running here. Shocked, Garnet immediately suspects that Lady Felicia is working with the Count. The Count arrives, clutching his arm and claiming they were attacked by ruffians. Felicia glares, silently cursing the Count as a useless pig for failing to stick to the plan. Garnet recognizes this as another one of Count Horn's sneaky tricks. As Louis says he will attend a meeting alone, Garnet stops him and asks him to wait. She insists on joining him, pointing out that the country's executives will be present. With resolve, she then asks if her father, the Count, can join the meeting too. The Count, with a bandaged hand, smiles greedily and eagerly agrees to the proposal. Garnet turns to Felicia, suggesting she should also attend due to her family's political influence. While Felicia wonders about this sudden invitation, Garnet adds that her presence will provide a different perspective. Felicia nervously asks Louis if her attendance is all right. Garnet agrees, vowing internally that she will not let those two run wild any longer. A promotional panel for the series is shown. The scene shifts to a grand mansion, where a formal carriage has just arrived. At the town lord's mansion, Louis, Garnet, and Felicia prepare to meet with the nation's officials. Standing outside, Garnet admits to herself that her nerves are starting to get to her. Her heel suddenly snaps, sending her stumbling forward right in front of Louis. With an eek, Felicia and her father are unexpectedly blown back by a gust of wind. Garnet finds herself caught mid-fall, suspended in the air by a swirl of magical green leaves. A handsome, white-haired man has caught her bridal style, smiling down at her. He gently sets her down, asking if it was magic, and she thanks him for the rescue. As he waves goodbye, she realizes with a blush that he can use magic, a rare sight for her. Louis watches their interaction with a sharp, stern expression. Inside a grand hall, officials seated around a long table murmur about the Duchess attending an official meeting for the first time. Garnet nervously sips her drink, feeling the weight of everyone's stares. Louis quietly tells her she can leave if she feels unwell. Smiling, she declines, admitting she's just worried about whether she'll perform her duties well. He reassures her by saying he has no particular expectations and slides a goblet toward her. Blushing, she wonders if this is his subtle way of telling her to relax. She looks over at Louis, asking about an empty seat at their table. At that moment, the white-haired man from earlier arrives, introducing himself as an envoy of Valazur. He and Garnet recognize each other with surprise. He introduces himself as Jade Eastcliff, an envoy from the Kingdom of Hisnaria, and kisses her hand, happy to meet her again. Louis observes the intimate greeting with a cold and visibly displeased look. The meeting commences, with Louis and the other officials reviewing documents. Felicia watches with a smirk, determined to prove she is better suited to be Louis's wife. Garnet interrupts the proceedings, stating she has questions for her father about his business. She reveals that the Count's waste management business has collapsed, causing widespread trouble, and that her entire dowry was used to cover his debts. The Count glares, thinking she's speaking out of turn, as Garnet recalls his past cruelty. With steady resolve, Garnet formally proposes conducting an on-site inspection of the business. Panicked, the Count shouts that her proposal is ridiculous, blaming the business's failure on her laziness. He portrays himself as a victim, claiming he adopted her out of kindness, only to be repaid with betrayal. Jade calmly intervenes, suggesting that, for now, they should focus on cleaning up the mess. Jade then casually mentions the rumor that the Duke has changed wives multiple times, implying he could easily get a new one regardless of her background. Louis listens to Jade's pointed comment with a silent, unreadable expression. Hearing the words "new wife," Garnet looks down, determined not to let that happen. Garnet presents another issue, requesting an investigation into the ruined state of the hunting grounds that once belonged to Louis's parents, vowing to take the Count down. Felicia sits rigidly in her chair, appearing utterly stunned by the turn of events. Louis dismisses the need for surrender as Garnett watches in confusion. He calmly reveals to Garnett that her father has already been investigated. Louis reflects on the report, disgusted to learn that Garnett was treated like a slave in her own home. Surrounded by a vision of thorny blue roses, Louis coldly declares he will put Count Horn on trial, shocking the man. The Count desperately begs Louis to reconsider, but Louis tells him he's lucky to be left alive. A memory surfaces of her father screaming at Garnett, threatening her with severe consequences. Back in the present, Louis steps protectively in front of Garnett, warning her father not to approach her. A guard begins to drag the Count away as Lady Felicia watches in surprise. The Count frantically points at Felicia, screaming that she set him up and is also involved. Feigning innocence, Felicia asks what on earth he is talking about. In a flashback, Felicia watches Garnett and Louis from afar, her name echoing in a thought. Garnett resolves to make Felicia pay, while Felicia thinks that Garnett shouldn't underestimate her. The Count continues to accuse Felicia of being equally guilty, and she feigns shock, whispering, "No way." Felicia approaches Louis, claiming it's her first time meeting the Duke, and insisting she's not guilty without evidence. She smugly claims to have evidence of her own, leaving a captured Count Horn baffled. Louis looks on unimpressed, stating that everything depends on the evidence presented. Felicia's expression freezes in horror as she realizes what note he is referring to. Louis presents a letter, thinking to himself that this is the note exchanged with Lady Felicia, a damning piece of evidence. He fans out the papers, remarking coolly that it seems like they made a very detailed plan. A man with white hair and green eyes studies one of the notes thoughtfully. The white-haired man reads the note, noting with disdain that they were planning to kidnap the Grand Duke's wife. Louis angrily orders his men to investigate and arrest both of them, stunning the Count and Felicia. Felicia shouts that it's not true, while her father yells that this outcome is different from what they had discussed. Louis coldly replies that he doesn't recall promising them anything. Felicia desperately grabs Garnett's hand, pleading with her to wait. Blushing and clasping her hands, Felicia claims she could never imagine doing something as terrible as kidnapping Garnett. She tearfully begs Garnett for help, insisting it's all a misunderstanding. Garnett calmly replies that if Felicia is truly innocent, the investigation should clear her name. TCH, Felicia angrily slaps Garnett's hands away. As Guard sees her, Felicia struggles, yelling that it hurts and demanding they let her go. She glares menacingly at Garnett, vowing to take her down. Garnett calmly watches, thinking she's seen Felicia's unpleasant side before and knows her tears are fake. Looking at her own wrist, she notes how forceful Felicia's grip was. The white-haired man appears behind her, remarking that her wrist must hurt, but she quickly denies it. He reaches for her injured wrist, offering to treat the wound. Louis cuts in between them, sharply telling the white-haired man to move. He takes Garnett's hand, telling her to come with him, and leaving her flustered. The white-haired man watches them leave through a large set of doors. He smiles to himself, musing that Louis is quite different from the tyrant of rumors. As Louis leads her away, Garnett asks where they are going. Stopping, he gently examines her bruised wrist, asking if that woman was the one who hurt her. Garnett quietly says yes. With a look of cold fury, Louis vows to peel the skin from Felicia's hands. Garnett smiles softly, asking him not to, and saying the bandage he applied is enough. She thanks him for his help, then cautiously mentions that his investigation must have revealed more about her past. She explains that he must know she was adopted from a lesser family and forced to help with her father's business. Looking worried, she wonders if he knows she was treated like a slave. Louis brings up the divorce letter from her father, acknowledging the Count is a liar, but thinking this one claim might be real. Garnett immediately panics, declaring that she doesn't want a divorce. Surrounded by a floral background, Louis looks at her gently and says he never claimed to want a divorce either. Garnett blushes deeply, stunned into silence by his unexpected reassurance. In an interrogation room, a weary Felicia asks the officials if she can go home now. She smirks, threatening them by saying her influential parents won't stay quiet about this. An official informs her she is also going to trial, leaving her stunned. She panics, sweating, as she wonders why this is happening to her. Felicia vehemently denies any wrongdoing, claiming the note used as evidence is nonsense. The official coldly reveals that Bernard Horn has already confessed everything about their conversation. Felicia grits her teeth in fury, cursing Count Horn for betraying her. She resorts to threats again, warning them of the political turmoil her parents will create. Unmoved, the official states that an order has already been issued for her trial. Shocking her again, She stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend why she is being put on trial. The scene shifts to the exterior of a grand, ornate courthouse. Inside, Louis and Garnet sit in the gallery as onlookers murmur about the Grand Duke's rare presence. Garnet feels overwhelmed by the environment, but resolves to endure it for the hearing. Louis turns to Garnet, quietly telling her she doesn't need to stay. She looks at him with resolve, insisting she must be there to see this through to the end. A bearded judge declares the court in session and calls the first defendant forward. A defeated-looking Count Horn silently approaches the stand. The judge begins to read the charges, accusing the Count of maintaining an improper relationship with the Grand Duchess. He continues, listing the crimes of extortion and plotting an abduction as unforgivable acts against the ducal family. The judge delivers the sentence. The Count is banned from his homeland and exiled to a remote post, leaving him horrified. The Count stammers in shock, unable to believe he is being exiled. He screams and struggles as two guards drag him away from the courtroom. Garnet watches her father being removed with a somber, steady gaze. She reflects that the Count seems so small now, finally feeling closure after years of suffering and never wanting to see him again. The judge calls the next defendant, and Felicia nervously takes the stand. The charges against her are read: conspiring to abduct the Duchess and ordering an attempt on her life by pushing her into the river. Her eyes widen in horror as the judge sentences her to imprisonment. Felicia stands frozen in terror, unable to process the verdict. A blond man in the gallery, her father, leaps to his feet, begging the Grand Duke for mercy. He desperately pleads for leniency, insisting that prison would be too cruel for his daughter. Felicia begins to cry, covering her face and claiming she was simply deceived. Together, she and her father plead with the Grand Duke to accept their request for a reinvestigation. Louis coldly dismisses their pleas, stating he has no intention of showing mercy to someone who tried to kill his wife. Felicia's feigned tears freeze on her face as she is stunned by his sharp words. She and her father are left speechless and sweating, their pleas utterly rejected. Louis states firmly that the sentence has been announced and will be carried out according to the country's laws. As guards grab Felicia, she struggles wildly, screaming that she is innocent. Her father points at Garnet, accusing her of faking the incident to frame his daughter and deceiving the Duke. Being dragged away, Felicia snarls that Garnet's heart must be tainted since she's the daughter of a trashy count. Garnet clutches her dress tightly, admitting to herself that their words still scare her. She stills herself, recalling the ample evidence and eyewitness accounts that prove Felicia's guilt. Standing tall, Garnet declares she won't listen to excuses from someone who could so casually push another person into a river. Felicia glares back in pure shock and rage. Furious at Garnet's defiance, she struggles against the guards, vowing that this is not over yet. With a final venomous scream, Felicia vows she will never forgive Garnet, even if it costs her her life. As Garnet turns to leave the chaotic courtroom, Louis calls out her name. She stands alone before the massive, closed doors of the courthouse. She looks down, a tear welling in her eye, as she thinks that this is finally the end. She reflects on how the hateful words of Felicia and her parents have left her mind and body completely worn out. Suddenly, a young man with white hair and violet eyes floats down before her, cheerfully saying, "Hello there." Garnet looks up in surprise, calling out to Lord Jade. The white-haired man, Lord Jade, observes that she appears to be unwell. Smiling faintly, Garnet dismisses his concern, claiming she is just a little tired. He suddenly scoops her into his arms, leaving her utterly shocked. Winking, he tells her to hold on tight as she confusedly asks what he is doing. Lord Jade leaps high into the air, carrying a surprised Garnet bridal style. Panicked, Garnet shouts that they are flying. She gazes in awe at the vast city spread out below them. Lord Jade explains he's staying nearby because he heard about the trial. Blushing, Garnet realizes he was worried and reassures him that the trial just finished safely. He smiles softly at her, and she shyly asks what it is. He tells her she looks better now, and she bashfully thanks him. From the ground, Louis watches as Garnet and Lord Jade descend. As Louis approaches, Garnet happily calls out his name, while Lord Jade greets him formally. Louis looks sternly at Garnet, explaining he was looking for her and questioning what she's doing. His stern gaze remains fixed on her as he repeats his question. Garnet explains that Lord Jade was helping her because she felt unwell. With a wave, Lord Jade announces his departure and walks away. Louis tells Garnet that the trial is finally over, and she quietly agrees. He reveals that his investigation uncovered the poor condition of her real family and asks why she kept it a secret. After she explains she didn't want to trouble him, Louis stuns her by promising to support her family for the rest of their lives. Overcome with emotion, Garnett tearfully thanks him. She reflects on her painful past, her family suffering while she was abused by the Count and later consumed by her own problems. She apologizes to her mother Ashton and Izard, vowing they will now be a happy family. The scene shifts to the exterior of a grand ducal mansion. Standing beside Louis, Garnet prepares to welcome important guests, determined to fulfill her duties as his wife. Lord Jade appears at the doorway, greeting them with a warm hello. He takes Garnet's hand and kisses it, startling her. Flustered, Garnet thinks that greetings in Lord Jade's country are quite intimate. Louis observes the interaction with a cold, displeased expression. The three of them sit at a large dining table in a spacious hall. Lord Jade asks Louis if the recent trial was troublesome for him. He agrees with Louis's unstated answer, adding that this level of hospitality is appropriate after his ordeal. Garnet observes that Lord Jade seems very professional when discussing official matters. Louis notes that Lord Jade's country has been reluctant to trade and asks if their policy has changed. Lord Jade explains that with many countries closing their borders, it's time to prioritize trade and proposes a mutually beneficial alliance, which Garnet sees as a major opportunity for Louis. Garnet reflects on the burdens of war and bloodshed, anticipating they will only grow heavier. After considering the proposal, Louis concedes that it doesn't sound like a bad idea. Lord Jade smiles, pleased to have received a positive response. He asks Louis to let him speak with his wife for a while, then tells Garnet it's an honor to learn about her country from her, and she returns the pleasantries. Lord Jade clarifies that he came to see her as well, not just Louis, leaving her confused. Leaning close, he whispers a question, asking if she can use fire magic. He explains that he can sense her unique aura and has only encountered earth and water magic users before. He tells her she's the first fire magic user he's met, which is why he wanted to get to know her better. Garnet is left completely bewildered by the mention of water and earth magic. Lord Jade laughs, asking if he spoke too quickly for her to follow. He invites her to go somewhere else for a bit, taking her by surprise. As he leads her away, her feet lift from the ground again, and she realizes with shock that they are about to fly. A maid on the ground stares in utter disbelief, exclaiming that they are flying. Blushing as she soars through the air, Garnet thinks that the wonder of Lord Jade's magic never gets old. As they fly, Lord Jade holds her hand and asks if the people around her know that she can use magic. With a sad expression, she explains that her brother also used magic, but was killed in the war, telling her to keep her own abilities a secret before he died. He looks at her with understanding, telling her that keeping this secret is proof of how hard she has worked to survive. His words bring tears to her eyes as he tells her she's strong. Smiling warmly, he adds that she doesn't need to be so polite when it's just the two of them. On the ground below, a maid spots them in the sky and urgently calls out to her master. Louise stares up, realizing it's magic and sternly questioning the white-haired man's true intentions. His eyes narrow with intense suspicion as he watches them against the bright blue sky. From the ground, he furiously shouts for them to come back. Hearing Louis's voice, Garnet looks down in concern, while Jade simply wishes he could talk with her a little longer. They land gracefully on the garden path just as Louis approaches from behind. Louis strides toward them, his expression severe and confrontational. Facing Louis, Jade politely asks for His Grace's permission to extend his stay for a few more days. Garnet considers his request, reasoning that it would be best for him to rest after such a long journey home. Louis coldly orders a maid to guide Jade to the guest room, and she immediately understands. As Louis and Garnet stand together, Jade watches them with a subtle, knowing smile. Louis suddenly turns to Garnet, telling her to wait. He looks at her with a serious expression, instructing her not to stay away from him from now on. Blushing and caught completely off guard, she lets out a small, confused sound. He gazes down at her, framed by blooming flowers in the garden. He then commands that until that man is gone, she is to sleep in his room. He looks back at her coolly and asks if there is a problem. Mortified and blushing furiously, her mind races with the thought of sleeping together with Louis.